What we have on the table here is the rear cross member section that's on your Corvette, and we here at VB&P manufacture these dual mount brackets and this composite mono spring system. This composite mono spring system will take the place of your current 9-leaf steel heavy spring that you currently have. The spring you're looking at right now is the 9-leaf steel spring that's currently in the back of your C3. This spring weighs approximately about 40 pounds, and it has a tendency over the years to flatten out and lose its spring rate. What we here at VB&P manufacture is a composite spring made out of composite material to take its place. The spring weighs a total of about 8 or 9 pounds, so you can tell that the weight savings alone is somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 plus pounds. We also offer our specially valved VBP shocks that are used with this spring, and they're specific for this spring only. I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit about the features and benefits because he's also installed this spring on a 69.
Thank you, Paul. I have. As a matter of fact, I've had experience installing this spring as well as this spring, and the composite spring bolts in the same location as the stock spring does. So, the stock spring, as you mentioned, weighs about 40 pounds, quite a bit of weight there. Over time, not only does it de-arch, but you get moisture between the leaves, and you get corrosion, you can get some noise out of them, some other things. And also, they're really hard to install and they're dangerous because there's so much energy that's built into this arch. And as you can see from the arch, it stands up quite tall compared to your composite spring. This spring is night and day, variety of reasons. You can see the amount of arch in it versus the amount of arch that's in the heavy spring here. And one of the benefits of this particular spring here is you can actually install it without having to jack up each end after everything's in place, and we can show that a little bit later when we put them on the vehicle. It comes with the hardware that's necessary to put it in and replace it. And one of the other benefits as well, which similar to your steel spring, you have the ability to adjust the ride height on the vehicle, but this comes with an extra long bolt that you can use to set a variety of different ride heights, and it comes with a new fresh poly bushings on the end that tighten it up very, very nice. This particular unit differs from stock because it's mounted off of the crossmember versus off of the differential. A couple of benefits on this. Number one, Paul, you see these areas here, and these allow you to set the stiffness of the ride. So for example, if I'm wanting to slalom the car and push it hard, I can set it to where I've got a very stiff spring rate. If I'm taking my wife on and we're cruising, we're riding the vehicle across country, we want a softer ride, I can simply move that location and I can soften the ride of the car, that simple, without a whole lot of work. Also, on this particular spring, it comes with these wonderful long bolts. And what's great about this is I can set my ride height exactly where I like it. So depending on the wheels and tires, depending on the performance application, I simply can set my ride height in conjunction with this. So I can not only stiffen it or soften it, but I can also raise and lower the rear of the car substantially. And also, there's a separate spring that's available. If you're riding really, really wide rims, you can go with a shortened spring. And it's wonderful because you can get the benefit of everything going on, and you can also get additional clearance for your rims within this set.
Very good. And also note that here at VB&P, when you want certain spring rates and certain rides, you can request certain spring rates on your rear dual mount spring depending on what your application is, whether you're a racer or just a Sunday driver. Whatever you want, we can provide that for you. And by the way, don't forget, everything here you see is metal. It can be powder coated in any of the colors that we described earlier in the video.
And Paul, one other item, these bushings right here, it's a great time to replace these bushings when you have this out. This sits up in the frame and holds this cross member into the car, and this area here is easily replaced once you have it out, and you have these parts available.
Oh, everything you see here is available and ready to install. We've got our sway bars. In this particular case, we got 1 1/8 inch, and we've got a 3/4 inch, both powder coated black, that we provide in our kit. Also on the table, we've got our upgraded Bilstein high performance shocks that come in all of the kits that we offer here at Vet Brakes and Products. In addition to just these sway bars, all the necessary hardware comes in these kits for installation. So this is a great upgrade to your performance package, and from a performance standpoint, I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit about it since he's installed all this stuff on his car.
Thanks, Paul. Paul, let's face it, if you're driving a Corvette, you're driving it because you want something that handles. And a lot of Corvettes, the older ones, come with a much smaller front sway bar than in this kit and no rear sway bar at all. The benefit of this is that you get the larger front bar. The sway bar tightens both sides so that when you go into a corner, the car doesn't roll. These bars work. They work very well. The kit works great. It comes with a bracket set that allow you to adapt the rear to a sway bar car. And these particular shocks are matched with the set. They have valving components in them, and the quality and integrity of the material that's in them is much greater than stock, and it helps that vehicle stay planted when you start to take it into the twists and turns. It's a nice upgrade for a stock car. It's a wonderful upgrade if you're adding additional components as well as larger wheels and tires and more horsepower and more cornering capability.
Okay guys, now we're going to do the mono-leaf rear spring installation. And before we can install it, we need to remove the old steel multi-leaf spring from the back of the vehicle. We've decided to replace the shock mounts with new ones. These old ones, we were actually able to save them, but it's really not worth the hassle and trouble to clean them up when you can get brand new ones. They make this process easy for you by labeling them right and left. I'm going to hand Danny the right one, and I'll keep the left one on this side. The strut mount, the smart struts, will reuse your original bolts to your differential carrier, so we'll be able to line those up, and also the way it's drilled, it can only go one way, so you can't put it in backwards. So Danny and I are going to go ahead and raise it up into the assembly at this point in time.
We're ready to drop the jack.
Okay. And now the spring is safely decompressed. We're going to go ahead and move to the other side and remove it. Danny's also going to pull the bolt out of the trailing arm. Okay, we've removed the other spring bolt on the right trailing arm, and now we're ready to drop the spring down. The only thing left holding it in are the 4 bolts that go into the differential carrier. So Danny's working on getting those loose. You can do this by yourself. It helps to have a helper though to pull the spring down once that last bolt comes out. So we're going to take care of that right now. Okay, we have the old steel spring completely removed, and we're getting ready to install the new mono fiberglass replacement spring. This comes with the hardware necessary to install it. It comes with the longer spring bolts for the corners. It also comes with a thicker gauge center mounting panel. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hold the spring up in place, and Danny's going to begin to install the center of the spring. Okay, and it centers on a little pin right in the differential carrier.
Thank you.
You first want to start out, get everything on there finger tight. And unlike our steel spring that we just removed, the arch on this spring is such that it's not necessary at this point for us to jack and fight with the corner in order to put the mounting bolts in the outside of the spring. So at this point, we'll put our polyurethane bushings in. We'll slide the new mounting bolt through. Drop that in place. And mount the locking nut on the bottom. And again, the way that you can adjust your ride height with this mono spring installed is the amount of adjustment that you put on this nut on the bottom. The more you tighten the nut, the higher the car will sit off the ground. The more you loosen the nut, the lower the car will sit. Also, this spring is about 1/4 of an inch shorter on each end overall than the stock steel spring.